Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is in the best of health. Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another live series of What Do You Do? Um, I just got to apologize. We are starting a little bit later for today because there's uh, some arrangements on our end. So I'm actually waiting for my guest to be joining us just in a bit. But meanwhile, if I can request for those of you tuning in, whether is it from LinkedIn, whether is it from YouTube, whether is it from Facebook, thank you so much for tuning in once again. My name is Shukri. I basically will be moderating, or in fact hosting, or holding this conversation about what do you do, right? So we'll be starting in about maybe a couple minutes. So if you're tuning in, whether on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, just stay tuned because we will be bringing in the our special guest for today just in a very, very, very short while. Meanwhile, while waiting, if I can get some help, if you can just help me to just click the share button so that more of our friends can actually tune in, because today's topic gonna be quite interesting. Oh, hi Izam. Hello. So today's topic is going to be quite interesting because I'm having conversation with this special guest. I will let him introduce more about himself just in a bit. All right. Where basically his task or his job or his career or his profession is known as the organizational developer or talent developer. What exactly they do, right? So while we wait, just a couple of minutes more. Perhaps maybe just let me just share with everyone once again. What are we having for today? What do you do is basically a live series where we hold conversation, where we actually have conversation with various professionals out there to talk about what do they exactly do, because most often than not, we always hear about conversation or live session where we talk about talk about growth mindset, we talk about certain specific skill set, right? The knowledge or the skills or the abilities. But for what do you do specifically, the difference is that we are talking about the profession. So it gives a different kind of exposure to individuals out there about, hey, I want to be like this person. For example, maybe one day I'm going to interview someone who is a digital marketer, for example. What do they exactly do? What entails in their day-to-day job? Because all of us would think that, a digital marketer, I sit behind my phone, use a social media, post certain things and that's it. Or for example, a HR professional, for example, what do a HR professional do? Basically, they just what do you call it? All they do is just to what do you call that? All they do is just to what do you call that? See, I lost forward suddenly. All they do is to actually just deal with human resource matters. But is it more than that, right? So that's exactly what do you do is all about. So stay tuned. We commencing with the conversation just in a short while. So while waiting, help me to just click on the share button. All right, just help me click on the share button, and then after that, we're just gonna be starting the live really, really very short while. So I apologize once again. So I shall see you guys back in a very, very, very short while. All right. So yeah, higher. What the usual phrase, higher fire, right? So is it more than that? All right. So let's have a conversation more just in a short while. All right. So stay tuned. Just give me a couple of minutes, and after that, you guys gonna see me back on screen, and we'll have more conversation about it. All right. So stay tuned. All right. Stay tuned. Okay. Now I got it right. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in once again. Whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. Good evening, everyone. Okay, let me do this proper once again. All right, good evening, everybody. If you're from LinkedIn, if I can request for you to just comment that you're from LinkedIn. If you're from YouTube, just comment from YouTube. If you're from Facebook, you can just comment from Facebook. Whichever channel that you're from, go ahead and comment so that we know that you are here with us. All right. So it's gonna be interesting because this entire conversation that we will be having just in a short while, to be very frank, me and the guest later on, we have never had a conversation face to face before this. Okay, so this will be the very first time we are doing this. But I think it's beyond that. But I think it's really about the power of LinkedIn, how it connects people across the border, across the region. But at the same time, understanding what different people are actually doing as well. All right. So thank you so much, Ian. Yes, thank you so much, Ian from LinkedIn, and then we have Izam from LinkedIn as well. Awesome. Thank you so much. If I can request for those of you on Facebook, you can help me to just share the link around. All right, so that more people can actually join us with this conversation right here. Okay, so let me not delay any longer. Let me not, for those of you tuning in, for today's live, I will let the special guest introduce himself. Okay, where is he from, what he do and all that, just in a short while. But a quick introduction once again. What do you do is basically a live series conversation where we talk about different professions out there. What do they do day in, day out, about their career, and also to debunk certain myth or maybe some stereotypes that they have ever gotten, right? So the first live I had was with regards to mindfulness coach, and then last week I had about freelancers. So this week I have someone who is in the organization, talent development, and basically what it is, right? So it just in the term, people will think, what do you develop? What kind of talent do you develop? What kind of organization do you develop, right? So I will leave the man himself to actually talk about it. All right. So let me just bring him on screen, and I shall let him introduce himself more with all of us. All right. So let's go. Hello.
Hi, Shiv.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
No, sorry. I know probably you are rushing back from work. So sorry that you were rushing and then having to meet the timing. I'm good. How's everything in Indonesia?
I think it's all good here. For my work, every day there is always new challenges, but it's always a nice challenges to solve. And only by that we are growing, right? If life is always flat, then it's very difficult for us to grow and push ourselves to the limit.
Of course. You're based in Jakarta?
Yes.
I see. If not for COVID, I would be in Indonesia pretty frequent because of my job as well. Because my day job, I'm actually doing learning and development. So I'm doing regional training. So I do fly into Jakarta, Bali, Bandung, Surabaya quite often, if not for COVID. But here we are.
So if you ever had to attend to deliver training in Bali, don't forget to invite me.
For which one again? Once again. Again.
If you ever had a chance to deliver training in Bali, right? So don't forget to invite me as well.
Oh, wow. I should. Definitely, definitely, I mean, it's always nice, right? I mean, it's always nice to have this kind of connection. I was just sharing my friend. I said the power of LinkedIn is really crazy, because it brings people together across the border. So I really thank you for agreeing to my crazy idea, when I say, I want to do this live, I want to bring you on board, and then you just say, okay, let's do this. We just clarified one or two questions, after that we just say, okay, let's just do this. Maybe, in fact, first things first, maybe for our viewers that's tuning in from LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook as well, perhaps maybe as a start, how do we pronounce your name? Because it's always nice when you see people from all the different regions, how do they pronounce their name? So I wouldn't want to pronounce it wrongly. So how can our guest actually pronounce your name? Let's go.
Okay, it's actually pronounced Yanuar.
Yanuar.
Yeah, Yanuar.
Do you get a common mistake where people call you as Anwar?
Well, not in Indonesia.
Okay. Fair enough. Yanuar. Is that how I should pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay, because I can definitely pronounce the second one, right? Kurniawan. Is that how I pronounce?
Yes,
I got
that's
it.
correct. So,
You know,
interestingly, is January has actually come from my birth month. So I was born in January, and
ah,
that's how it come. So I had a colleague in some of my colleague from German when I was working at the Mitsubishi Fuso Japan,
mm-hmm.
and then it's for them it's easier to pronounce my name somehow because like the way they pronounce Januar as a month is
Ah,
pretty close to my name. So
makes
that's a little
sense.
bit nice fact about
So
my name.
your basically your name is kind of very much your birth month. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Oh,
correct.
so
That's how creative my parents are.
convenience, right? Convenience is like, it's like, what kind of name should I give, right? It's like, January, It's like, yeah, no. So they just got, but they cannot make it too exact. So they got to have like a bit of slang right there just to make it a bit
Right.
more, sounds like an, like me. But it's a nice name. I love that name, by the way. To be honest, I love Indonesian name. There's a certain tone, there's a certain sound to it. It's not just like a simple flat tone. When you pronounce the name, there's like a certain tone to it, like Kurniawan. There's a certain tonality to it. So it's very, very nice. So, um, Yanuar, you're here? Okay, wait. Okay. Are you here? Okay, I think there's a bit of connection. Uh, you hear me, Yanuar?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, got it. Okay, so as you are very much aware, all right, as you're very much aware, this live session is really about for the guests to actually share about their profession specifically. What do they actually do and all that. So to cut the story short, as the title of the entire live session, for all our guests that's watching us right now, and for those of them who will be listening in through podcast after this, what do you actually do? Yeah, Noor, let's go.
That's an easy question, but very difficult to answer, right?
That's always the case.
Well, yeah. So basically, I would like to say that my work is divided into four pillars.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is related with the organization development, which in an organization it's all about understanding whether we have the right structure to support the
Mm-hmm.
business, whether we have an effective structure in this.
Mm-hmm.
Are we having too many layers? Are we having an optimal span of control,
Mm-hmm.
and etc. So that would be the first pillar of my work, and it's really about the understanding on how the structure should change
Mm-hmm.
following the business strategy. The second pillar I would say is about the talent management.
Mm-hmm.
So if the first one talking about the job, talking about the box, now the second one is talking about the people inside.
Okay.
So it's really about like the people career path. It's about a succession planning. Do we have enough bench strength
Mm-hmm.
for the critical roles in the organization? How we actually have a plan in terms of individual career and all
Mm-hmm.
of those related questions, right? How we manage the performance, what would be the performance management system, do we have critical roles and the success profile, do we
Mm-hmm.
have the right competency model. So
Mm-hmm.
that's about the second pillar of the talent management. And the third pillar on what do I what I do is about the learning and development. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really in a sense of making people become the better version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And for the L&D itself, we divided into three different pillars. One is
Mm-hmm.
about growing our newbies, really ensuring that the new hire can adapt with our culture, really understand about our business, so that especially during the probation period, they are able to cope with our fast pace in the organization. So the second would be what I would like to say, grow operators, which really means about the technical skill.
Okay.
It can be the technical, as in like marketing, finance, and others. And it also can be a general technical like public speaking, negotiation, communication, presentation skills, Excel, for example. And lastly, the third pillar of the learning and development would be growing our leaders. And it's very important to be able to come up with the right development for the different level in the organization. That's why I created the learning catalog in the company to show the journey of the people starting their journey as an analyst all the way through becoming a senior VP, executive VP. So what kind of the different leadership training along the way, um, as they just promoted into a manager, for example, before they even promoted as a manager, and also when they are grew up into from the manager into becoming a senior manager, becoming a VP, what are the different interventions that they give to help them become the better version of themselves and to help them on the day-to-day operation. And the last pillar of what I do is about the organization culture.
Okay.
And for the culture itself, I would say that we have four pillars. So the first is about employee engagement. This is on this is all about the activities to ensure that our employees are keep motivated. So to ensure that how we can build trust in the organization, to ensure that how we can always increase the motivation of our employee, how we can create a shared identity, although we are now working from home. So we still get a sense, get a feeling that we are part of an organization called Lazada. And lastly, it's about how we showing our care to our employee. So, for example, we have our employee assistance program. This is the mental health support 24/7 that our employee can access, partnering with our external vendor. We also did distribute a care package, especially the COVID care package and the working from home supports. Like, for example, we give them vouchers so that they can shop anything that can support their working from home environment. For example, if they would like to buy a neck pillow massages or any
Yeah.
other thing can support their health and well-being as well. So that would be the first pillar of the culture. The second pillar of the culture would be about values, because it's very important as the organization that our employees understand our values. And I think this is not as easy to implement as the engagement activities, because when we are talking about culture, it really goes deep into a person, and it really takes time for the culture to be permeated, to be absorbed into each individual in the organization.
Yep.
The third pillar of the culture I would like to say is about internal communications. This is how we manage the communications, especially that the employee-wide comms within the company. And lastly, about culture is about employer branding. So it's very important also on how we communicate our brand to the external parties, to the potential new hires, for example, or to the other people on how they would like to see Lazada as a brand in terms of the employee. So that's basically it. Not so much,
Wow.
but I think that's quite very.
I'm suddenly, I'm lost for words, because when you say not so much, then I'm thinking the amount of pillars that you are heading or overseeing, it's basically, if you talk about pillars, it's basically like a very strong pillars to a very strong building or a foundation. So if you say it's not so much, you're just being a humble guy right here. You're just being a very, very humble guy. But
And
wow.
I have the reason why I can uh, 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 survive with that many pillars. It's actually because I have a very strong and capable people in my team.
Nice.
Otherwise, it's very difficult to, manage different topics at the same time. So I really agree
Of
that
course.
when we attract a new joiner to hire our team, it always best to hire someone who is better than us, who has more expertise than us, so that we
I love
can
that.
create a super team.
Of course. Of course. Wow. You know, I'm honestly, sincerely, suddenly lost for words. But uh, it's really, really interesting when you mention things like, succession planning. You talk about the L&D aspect, the learning and development aspect. In fact, learning and development itself, it's a function which a lot of people have different misconception about. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't really understand. They know, oh yeah, there's such a function, but what exactly they do and how do they actually serve the organization? Not a lot of people are very much aware. They think those who are in learning and development, their job is only to talk, or sit down and then just train. But it's actually more than that. And it's also nice to hear when you mention about the cultural part of it, the organization culture. You talk about engagement, you talk about the values, you talk about internal comms, which is a branding aspect. And I love when you touch the point about when it comes to values and brand, it's not as easy as it is. It's not a matter of, okay, this is what Lazada values are. After tomorrow, you're gonna come to work and behave according to the value. It doesn't work that way, isn't it? Right?
Correct.
So, and and I'm just curious, how big is the team in Indonesia, if you don't mind, for Lazada Indonesia as a whole?
Okay. So as a whole, we are actually like having two entity, and that we have the integration. That's why my responsibilities was also expanded. Uh, uh, when we are talking about Lazada, we have
Uh-huh.
Lazada platform, which is probably in terms of numbers would be roughly around 500 to 600 employees.
Wow. Okay.
And we also have our logistic folks, which is roughly probably around 1,000 to 1,300 employees. So
Oof.
that's how big the organization is only for Indonesia.
Yeah, that's only just for Indonesia, right? Not even the other countries. Wow. I mean, if that's in terms of organization, now my next question to you is, given the various verticals that you have, right? You have three pillars, just now you mentioned, and then on top of that, sorry, three overarching pillars, and then on top of
Mhm.
these three overarching, you have more pillars underneath. How many people are there that's working alongside, or I would love to say working alongside with you in your team?
I actually manage around 9 people in my team. So half of
Wow,
them would support the platform and half of them would support the logistics.
I see. Wow, interesting. Wow. Okay, cool. So now that you already shared with us the things that you are doing, I must say that you are really a superhero lah, huh? Because to be able to cover all these verticals, it's not an easy process, because again, it's a lot of, and you are not just dealing with the business numbers, but you're dealing with humans as well. That's another challenge of its own, because things will be different. People might not be agreeing to certain things and all that. But perhaps my next question to you would be, um, I mean, if you can just briefly share with all of us, what is it day in, day out? I mean, day to day like for your job? Because people, yeah, you shared about all your verticals, but what is it if people were to walk through day to day with you?
Mhm.
What exactly is what do you do in a day to day kind of environment?
I think um, the day-to-day things for me right now probably different with for me a few years back. I think
Mm-hmm.
in the positions that you need to manage a lot of verticals, um, my day to day would always be in the morning at the beginning of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to understand the priority and the things that might happen for the whole week.
Okay.
You really need to be very clear on what is everyone focus on that week,
Okay.
and then I think for me, I spend most of the time actually having a conversation with each lead in the team, trying to
Mm.
understand whether they have any issues, how's the progress, and really especially is there any support that I need to do just to
Mm.
ensure everything went smoothly.
I
So
see.
that would be it. That would be the things like talking about the business. Sometimes the next things is really to focus on the work that I need to do on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and lastly, having conversation with my team, but less on the work, but really to understand their personal issues. So I think that's how I would like to, break my work time, my day-to-day thingy. So it's really about understanding the priority, getting the updates, the next step, the things that I need to support my team with. So it's more on the business topic, doing the things that I personally need to do on the work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And lastly, really checking everyone mental health when
Wow.
everyone issues. And I think this is important because, like, for example, second, why I do the one-on-one with my team to check the progress because I need to
Mm-hmm.
delegate the responsibilities to them. I
Makes
can't
sense.
do everything by myself.
Yep.
So that's why by ensuring that I do understand what they are doing, so at least
Mm-hmm.
I can be calm and I can focus on the things that really only me that have to do it, that I cannot
Mm.
delegate because there will always be some part of the work that you can't delegate.
Yep.
And lastly, checking the mental issues is important because I really want to stretch my team to
Mm-hmm.
achieve more, but I
Of course.
also would be very careful uh, that they don't break. So
Yep.
that's basically how I divided my daily work.
Well, so I hear you. There's a lot of people direct relationship in terms of having conversation with people, hearing their concerns, and at the same time also not only hearing their concern but also finding ways on how you can actually enhance their work experience as well,
Mhm.
right? And without causing them to burn out. I think that's the last thing that you want your team to go through also, right?
Mhm.
After given all the tasks and then they're like, oh, there's too much work, I cannot take it anymore. And then after that, so I think that's the last thing that any of the leaders also wants to see from the team as well. Very, very nice.
Mhm.
Okay, there's a question from one of the viewers, but I'll take that question just in a short while. Perhaps maybe now that you already shared with us about what do you do as well as your day to day kind of tasks or in fact activities. Um, maybe if I'm just curious, what are some of your misconception that you have actually gotten from people when you tell people, oh, I'm doing organizational development, or I'm doing talent development? What kind of misconception or stereotypes you have gotten that people probably because they are not aware about what do you do, what you do. So yeah, what kind of misconception have you gotten before, if you don't mind?
The misconception, but let me talk this in a more general manners, right?
Sure.
As an HR
Mm.
in general. And I think this is also partly because how the HR people are doing as well, like in the past. It's not happening in
Mm-hmm.
Lazada, but it's much more like how I observe the organization when I'm doing my consulting work, for example. As an HR, we used to be a very administrative, and we might uh, think that as a support functions. But I think the problems or issues is that having an HR that really separate with the business. So really having an HR team that thinks in terms of the HR perspective without considering what are the business needs. So it's like the HR
I
is just
see.
running by itself, right? So I think that what created misconceptions that HR is not helpful, that they have their own agenda. Every time HR has
Agenda. Yeah.
initiative, the business would say that, what's that? I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and why we have additional tasks. So I think the good intention can become a bad perceptions, right? If there is no
Yes.
clarity, if there is no alignment with the business, if we do not understand where is their peak season. That's why for us in Lazada, we are really considerate about the business. Whatever we are doing is to help our business, the people, our people, our employee.
Yep.
We are very careful when delivering training, and really consider the time. If there are a lot of campaigns, then we are not going to do trainings during that period, or we are doing a very small one only for a targeted people. So that kind of things. So I think the conception usually happen when people only see things from their own perspective without trying to
Yep.
get the understanding from the different point of view.
Very, very valid. Make a lot of sense. And I think if I were to have a conversation with someone who is maybe a HR, maybe if their appointment is called HR, right? Like HRBP, for example, I think they will also share the same sentiment like what you shared. Because a lot of things that HR are doing, in fact, it's a lot of good things. But like you rightly mentioned, because it's interpreted differently. So it makes it like, oh, there's an agenda, or because the HR is only siding the business and not really focusing on the people much, and then that becomes another a set issue of its own, lah, right?
Mm.
So what I'm hearing is this. So are you saying that you guys are the how should I put it? You guys is, if you talk about some of the misconception would be that people have this idea that, oh, you guys are basically just HR, but it's just a different term for it. Is it some of the misconception that you are getting as well?
Yeah, I think that probably they just see HR as an admin that only can support with the basic things, cannot really support with the strategy thingy. While we see, if we are seeing it properly and correctly, I think HR, we are in the people team, are very crucial to ensure that the organization can work as productive as
Yeah.
possible. For example, when the business have the strategy to expand into more branches, let's say. I think in HR we should be able to provide our view on how the structure would be, how the manpower planning would be, so that we could also, really giving the values to the business. And rather than the business say that, oh, I would like to add X number of employees, if we
Yep.
properly do a workload analysis, for example, we might be able to say that, are you sure? Based on the calculation, based on the analysis, we only need like 50% of your initial proposals. So what would be the justifications? And it has a long implications, right? Whether the job competencies is correct. If we have much more people than actually we should have, it's very difficult to, you know, to make into a correct amount, right? Because it's very costly to lay off, for example. And
Yep.
so that kind of thing. So I think as an HR, I think it's also our responsibility to show to the business that we are actually not an admin. We are actually your strategic partner as well.
Make a lot of sense. I totally hear you. I totally agree with you on that. So I'm quite mindful of time. So I'll be doing some time check a little bit on my end as well. So yes, I totally hear you about how the view about HR should have some shift or change. Whether or not it should come from internal, which means from the HR themselves, they should be perceived differently from what they do and how they engage people. Because sometimes, as much as our intention is, my intention is clear, I want to be there with the people, but sometimes the way we carry ourselves, the way we actually execute certain things might be interpreted wrongly. Like what you rightly mentioned, that it might not be seen as a very strategic partner. It might be seen more like I'm just siding one part of the business, which is quite sad because, to be honest, there's a lot of noble things that the HR teams are actually doing out there as well. So then I think that kind of like brings me to my next point, right? Given your years of experience, given your vast experience in this field of people development, organizational development, talent development, you are very much, I would say, because I think at this period, especially, people are very, very critical to make a business function or business run. So, in fact, your role is a very, very critical role, I might say, right? Because especially when you talk about succession, who comes up next matters on where the organization propel forward.
Mhm.
After being around for after doing all this for a couple all these years, what are some of your great satisfaction from your own profession? What makes you feel so satisfied in doing what you do and still doing what you do? Because it's not easy, right? I mean, given all the pillars that you are doing.
Yes. Well, I think um, I always seen like what would be the impact that I can give for the
Mm-hmm.
organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, um, in Indonesia, we have it's very easy to see let's say a critic, a comment to the
Mm-hmm.
organization from many ways. Like we have Glassdoor, now we have Instagram, and some of the Instagram account can
Mm-hmm.
be very, very critical. So
Yeah.
for me, that would be how I would assess um, my team performance, like the impact that
Mm.
we give to the employee. If
Nice.
we can mitigate on how that kind of the accounts give a negative comment uh, and even give a positive comment. Uh, we are actually having a online games competition and it being catched by that account. That was very interesting, right? So it's really
Mm-hmm.
about how the impact that we give. We might not see that physically, but I think
Mm-hmm.
our employees can feel that, like how we care about them, how we provide them with the engagement, how we hear
Yeah.
them in the form of the follow up of the employee survey. For
Mm.
example, a lot of people are saying that they have um, no clarity in terms of career development. And what we
Mm-hmm.
did was that we are launching a career development week in which we are explaining
Nice.
how the career path in the company, and we are also opening a session with all of our leaders to share about their department and also to share
Nice.
about their personal career development. And I
Nice.
think as the follow up on that for the next uh, 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 FGD about the employee survey,
Yep.
we hear less concern about that
Mm.
because we already provide things, right? But the
Yep.
second is always like how people then use what we provided.
Yep.
But at least we're
It's
now
always.
providing it.
Yeah.
So I think that what makes me happy when I'm seeing that, um, regardless how big or a little it is,
Mm-hmm.
that my work can create change in the organization,
Mm-hmm.
especially people can actually feel that as well. I
Mm.
still remember that when I first joined the organization, when we have our live streaming, probably only, let's say, it's very difficult to get people to tune in,
Yep.
maybe only 50 people, only 60 people. But now I'm
Mm.
very happy that when we have an initiative, then we can have like 100 viewers,
Wow.
150. So it makes people
Nice.
are more eager to, to see and being involved in whatever we do. and that's the same thing. They never like in the past. There might not be a clarity in terms of their learning, and
Yep.
then I created the learning journey. We started to deliver the training itself, and the people I think get the benefit of it, because for the participants who came and attended the training, usually they give a high a good feedback.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and it really make me happy when I see people grow.
Nice.
And on a smaller scale, it will be about my team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a leader, what my responsibility is not about my success, but it's also about my team success. So if I
Nice.
can see them become more successful, if I
Mm-hmm.
can see them grow in terms of their competency,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm actually really, really happy about that. Like for example, um, my junior team member, um, they used to only listen for instructions.
Mm-hmm.
When I joined the company, when I on the very first few days, I talk to
Mm-hmm.
them and I tell them that this is not my team way of working.
Okay.
Um, in my team, I really would like to hear your opinion. So, in much of the cases, if you have any issues, please also come up with the solutions, with the options.
Yep.
So, I really want to push them to think. I do not just want to give them, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that, because it probably easier for us and it's
Yep.
quicker, but I don't think it helps the other people grow as an individual.
Of
And
course.
I
I
really
totally
like
agree.
it right now that every time my team come with me and having issues, he or she will also immediately say that, oh, Yanuar, we have issue here, but this would be the options. And I think the option A
Mm,
is the best. What do you think? So I
nice.
don't even have to ask them anymore, but they come. And I think that's how, seeing these people grow. And I learned this from my first boss,
Mm.
who is a Japanese back then when I started my career.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of things that I learned from my boss, from my mentor, that's also the things that I apply and I do
Mm-hmm.
with my team. And yeah, if you say that what makes me happy, it's really on a smaller scale, really seeing that my teams get successful.
Nice. And I think it's really nice to hear from leaders like yourself. Whenever when leaders say things like, it's not just it's not about saying about my success, but it's actually saying the success of my team. Actually, right? Because as you are building your team, or as you are building people around you, or you're actually building and creating success for yourself as well. So I think that's really, really very nice. And I think for those of your team who's probably going to be watching this or watching this right now, I'm pretty sure they can actually feel it. They can actually acknowledge it as well. From your sincerity in sharing as well. So I think that's really, really, really very nice of what you just shared and all that. Um, so then my next question to you would be then, if that would be the satisfaction, what would be some of the? Have you ever during your entire period being in this space that you felt that ah I really don't think I've done my best. Sorry, I don't think I've done what I'm supposed to do, and I think I failed being a people developer, talent developer, organizational developer in that sense. Have you ever encountered that moment, a stumbling block, saying that, hey, you know what, I think I failed, and I don't think this is it for me. Have you ever faced that? If it's no, it's a no. Doesn't matter.
I think for that, right, the way I would like to see that is always keep doing self-reflections. And I think
Mm,
this is the good things in Lazada, that we really push about self-reflection very, very strongly.
okay.
So we have what we call the postmortem, in which we always evaluate everything, like any projects, any
Mm,
initiative. If we are talking about learning, then this would be any learning program. We always have a time to assess what is actually working well,
Mm-hmm.
what actually can be improved. So no
Okay.
matter how good the event is, there should be always something that missed,
Yep.
something that's not working,
Mm-hmm.
and something that needs to be improved, right? So
Yep.
I think answering your question is, of course, and I do believe that there is no such thing as perfections every time.
Mm.
For me, like facing probably it might not major. It can be small, it can be medium.
Mm-hmm.
Imperfections is actually something that I would say probably common.
Mm.
Because if we are trying new things, we've never know how it goes until we done that, right?
Of course. Agree.
So yeah, I think really the case is the humility,
Mm-hmm.
um, to really hear the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think it's one way for us to be able to self-reflect, but it's I
Yep.
think still another thing to be able to hear from other people
Yep.
what we can improve, because it might be easy to be to say or to hear on accepting negative feedback, but in
Mm.
actuality, if you don't create that as a habit, that's a very difficult things to do if you don't have the enough humbleness and humility as well.
Agree. Agree. Totally agree. Yanuar, just now you mentioned about learning and development. That's part of the verticals or part of the pillar that you are doing. Um, we have a question right here. Probably I'm not. Probably is one of your teammate. I assume Rajesh Dylan. Is it?
No, no, no. Yeah, I know.
So the question is, selamat malam Pak. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people to manage. Yeah, that's exactly my thought as well. Because even though you have 9 people that is reporting into you, but you have thousands that is craving to be developed as well, and that's part of the development process. So the question is, how much does technology support the L&D efforts and the overall organizational learning? This is very interesting, especially from a Lazada point, being a
Yeah,
very
but
tech driven.
yeah, I think that's a good question, right? And I for this I really need to appreciate my team member, my L&D head.
Mm-hmm.
I think for this, the key is really to understand what kind of trainings that that is very repetitive,
Mm-hmm.
and so that it can be more productive if we convert that into a e-learning
Makes
instead
sense.
of doing the the classroom training over and over for thousands of
Yep.
employees. There would always be a part where learning could be digitalized,
Yep.
put it into an interesting content, so
Mm-hmm.
people are also interested to do that. So it's not, for example, it's not only in the form of PowerPoint, it's not only in the form of PDF, but
Mm-hmm.
can be in the form of the interactive learning such as the videos,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's also easier for people and it's more interactive and interesting for people to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the key to answer this, how much technology support is, really need to understand that what kind of trainings that more effective or more productive to be digitalized.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Even for another training, right? That we still need to do it face to face, but we
Yep.
cannot because of this working from home environment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still very important on how the technology can support the interaction of the training itself. Is people able to participate using that particular platform?
Mm-hmm.
Is people able to, you know, uh, being involved in the discussion?
Yep.
Are we able to create a smaller session? So that kind of aspect, I think, is very important. So I think um, for sure the technology support is very important,
Mm-hmm.
but the key is really to to understand the objective of what we would like to achieve. Because
Yep.
for me, um, how I see technology is always a means, it's
Mm-hmm.
not the end result, right? and a
Yep.
lot of ways that we can achieve the end results. Thanks. That's a good questions. And also the
Yep.
other thing is with this working from home, we also need to have the learning portals, the self-learning. So it's really like if you are talking about the blueprint, probably the hybrid learning concept.
Mm-hmm.
We get understanding which learning that still needs to be done face to face,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time we are also supporting our employees for a bit-sized learning that they can do it by themselves through the
Yep.
self online learning,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Makes sense. Very, very. Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is a very, very important. It is a very powerful question, because while a lot of people are riding on the idea of, oh, I need a technology, but sometimes it's good to take a step back and understand how or when can the technology actually enhance the learning experience. So thank you so much, Rajesh. Rajesh, I hope I pronounced that name right. Uh, for that question. So if you're not aware, we actually already like over. I think we have been speaking for the past 40 minutes or so. So I'm actually down to my last two questions. In fact, to be very honest,
Mhm.
so I have one last question, which is the last one for you to think about, which is what is that golden ticket advice? But don't answer it now. That's for later. Okay, but I'm just gonna give it to you first for you to think about it. All right. What would be that golden ticket advice for those of them who want to explore or do what you do? Because a lot of people are not aware of what your profession is. To be very honest, because it's not like I mean, if you say that you're in HR, people would assume, okay, what's HR? You're saying you're doing finance. People would know, but when you talk about organization development, it's not something common. So for you to think about first, what would be that golden ticket advice that you want to share with people out there, or if they want to explore or do what you do? We will keep that to the last part later on. But before that, after that conversation that we had for the past 40 minutes or so, I'm going to give you another task, which is going to be very, very tough. Okay, I'm going to give you a task which is very, very tough. In just one sentence, what is your profession all about? If you're able to do that. By the way, one sentence, please don't make it, like a super long one sentence. If you're able to, what will be that one sentence, not a full paragraph? What is your profession really all about?
I think what my profession is all about is actually aligned with my passion, and that's how right now I have a very short sentence on my bio on LinkedIn. I think it's all about to make people become the better version of themselves.
Nice. Nice. So simple, short, and concise. And that is really exactly it goes deep, by the way. That statement actually goes really deep. Is to really make people the better version of themselves. And I got to agree with you from a L&D point of view. The satisfaction is really when you see people turning back and say that. I mean, of course, we are not expecting for people to say that, hey, thank you so much, because of you I'm able to do this. No, we don't really expect that. But the fact that you're able to see people grow to be a better person and able to eventually fly off, I think that's really, really very satisfying. Um, there's a comment right here. The pillars were clearly and well explained. Great management style. Absolutely. I got to be very honest. The way you describe it, it was very strategic. It seems like you have that picture at the back of your head, right? How you systemize the entire process. I'm just curious. From a profiling point of view, right? DISC. Are you a C person? Are you pretty high C? I'm just curious. High C.
I forget on this.
You seems to be like no, I'm not trying to, but you seems to be a very, very, you're able to compartmentalize every single processes, very clear the
I
direction that
think
you
I
have.
think I was good. My first will be D and C, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice. It makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Given your appointment, as in you have to make that decisions and all that as well. Awesome. So that brings me to my last question. All right. Which is the golden ticket advice for those who want to explore or do what you do. I'm gonna play a short video, which is just about 5 seconds video. Okay, which would then eventually I will leave it to you to actually share what is that golden ticket advice for those of them who want to be in that space of what do you actually do. All right. So right after the short 5 seconds video, then I will leave it to you to share your last few words as well. All right. So let's go. All right. So Yanuar, what would be the golden ticket advice for them to for them who wants to be in that space or do what do you do? I leave it up to you. Go ahead. It's your time, man.
Okay, so I think my golden ticket would be first, you really need to have the patience to help other people because without patience, it's very, very tough to work in the people team. And the second, you also need to have the eagerness and the hungry to understand about the business strategy, to really to understand where the business is going. And it really means that you need to be able to understand the whole business model, the whole process. um, Otherwise, if you don't have that mindset, then we are only be a common HR that people might only see us as an administrative or support functions. Because when our business partner talk about the business language, if we are not be able to be in par with them and also providing our point of view, especially related with the people, then they most likely they will see us only for an admin or supporting role. So that's would be, I think, the top two. Really, you need to have patience about people, and second, really, you also need to have patience about the business itself. Only by having these two that you would be able to, really become a strategic HR advisor.
Nice. Passion for people at the same time, that whole very strategic role that you're playing as well. You know what? Thank you so much once again for joining for this conversation about what do you do, and thank you so much for being so generous with your sharing. Which makes this whole conversation a seamless one. Really, really appreciate it. And you know what? I'm really hoping, really hoping, if the pandemic gets better and we're able to fly in, whether I will be flying into Indonesia or you fly into Singapore, I would love to catch you in person. I think we should really sit down and have some have coffee and all that. If I think in Indonesia, I need to try what kopi kenangan, is that the popular brand in Indonesia brand, right? If I'm not wrong, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I was just connected with the founder himself. I need to have a conversation with him as well. Amazing fella, amazing guy. So yeah, once again, I really appreciate your time, really appreciate your sharing, really appreciate your golden ticket advice. In fact, for myself, I think there's a lot for me to learn as well, being in the learning and development space. I think the question would be what's next after learning and development, because as learning development is just a small portion of talent development. So the question is, how much do I want to further deepen my skills as well? So thank you once again. All right. I really appreciate your time. For those of them who are tuning in, whether on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, or eventually to be listening in through the podcast itself, thank you so much for listening in. Yanuar, I will take you off the screen for a while. Then once I'm done with this live, I'm gonna catch you just a short while. So don't leave yet. All right, don't leave yet. Just stay. All right, just hang in there. All right. So that's so for those of you who are tuning in, that's Yanuar for you from Lazada Indonesia, who's the head of organization talent and organizational culture. Well, very long, his term. I need to think of a shorter term for that. But really, there's a lot of things that he's covering. There's a lot of verticals that he's doing. But essentially, it's about making people better, developing people to be the better self as well. All right. And at the same time, to be very strategic, not just about developing people, but to be able to develop people to contribute back to the organization, to be able to grow the organization better as well. So thank you so much for those of you who tune in and listening in as well, whichever channels that you are in. Next week, I will have another guest. So next week going to be interesting. From Indonesia, we're going to be flying all the way. I'll be bringing you through this journey, right? Because you cannot fly. So next week I'll be bringing you flying in all the way to Penang in Malaysia. All right. For those of you who miss some Penang cendol char kway teow, I'll be bringing you right into Penang in Malaysia, where I'll be having conversation with a career coach. Right? What exactly is a career coach? Is it someone who, the typical stereotype, they do not know what they need to do, then eventually, let me just be a career coach, I'll tell you what you can do, but eventually, what exactly they do. So next week, join me, next week on the 12th of March at same time, 8:30 p.m., where I'll be having conversation with another friend of mine, right here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube as well, or if you're listening to the podcast. So with that said, please stay safe, Please be kind and please wear your mask wherever that you go, because we are all fighting this pandemic together, whichever part of the world that you're in. All right, and let's pray for one another so that we get through this entire pandemic together as well. All right. So with that said, thank you for watching, and please stay safe, and I shall see you guys in the next live session. All right. Take care, everyone.